Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Shaan Puri with us. Shaan, thanks for coming on the program.
Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shaan, you are the CEO of Monkey Inferno, which is an awesome name for a company. But your company actually has an incredibly interesting business model, and it's the company behind the relaunch of Bebo.com. So first, tell us at kind of a high level, what is Monkey Inferno?
So Monkey Inferno is the brainchild of Michael Birch. After he sold Bebo to AOL for basically, retirement money and then some, he had the opportunity to do one of many things. He could do nothing. In fact, when I interviewed with, he, typically asked, do you have any questions for us as the company, that you're interviewing for? And I said, yeah, you could be on a boat looking at an island you own, sipping a margarita, but instead you created a job for yourself. He was CEO at the time. And I said, why? And that's when he sort of told me the vision, and that's what I'll tell you guys today, which is he couldn't imagine himself not building stuff. And he knew there were many people out there who are wired the same way. They love to build stuff. And because of the financial outcome that he had with Bebo, he had the luxury of doing it his way, which to him meant not having to cater to any outside investors. So it was self-funded. And it was an idea of, hey, let's bet on the people. So put together a really small core group of people who are insanely talented and give them a lot of freedom. So he thought that was the recipe. Bet on people and let the ideas flow through. Whereas a typical investment incubator or accelerator, they bet on ideas. They take applications, which is teams with ideas going at certain markets, and it's lots of different variables. But we simplified the equation, which was bet on people, give them freedom, give them funding, give them the complementary pieces. So in-house here we have a lawyer, HR, finance, we have a chef, we have designers, developers, ops, everything that you would need to build a startup tech company. It's right here. And the idea is take multiple bets at once. So there's about 22 of us here. We work on 4 projects at one time, all in parallel. And so when you fail, you immediately apply those learnings to the next project because you all stay there. And so that was kind of the idea was go fast. If you're going to fail, that's fine, but use those learnings to succeed in the next run. And it's a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it sounds so unique compared to other kind of scenarios. Because like you said, there's the typical incubator, and you hear VCs all the time say they bet on people and they look for the entrepreneur, but then their actions don't quite line up with that statement, where you guys are actually doing it that way. You're actually hiring people, and we'll figure out the idea as we go, and the ideas will change as we go. Is that right?
That's exactly the premise. Is first, you got to put your money where your mouth is. If you say, the team is the most important part, people will figure it out, then just bet on the people and really hold that as your only criteria. Because you're right, the ideas morph over time. They have to. So once we realized that, we said it's not a very good idea to make our judgments based on the starting point of an idea. We still do try to have great ideas and attack interesting markets, but the whole focus of Monkey Inferno has started with betting on really talented people.
Yeah, now the people watching this, obviously they don't run an incubator or whatever it is you call Monkey Inferno, whatever kind of thing it is. They don't have 20 people working for them with multiple projects going on, but they do have a core team, and maybe they have to shift ideas even though the team stays the same. Do you think they should apply that philosophy on a smaller scale? Be open to ideas changing, keep the team, if they're talented, as the core, and work off of that as kind of the base?
Yeah, I know I was this way before I came here, where there's a handful of people, 3 or 4 people who I'm like, no matter what venture I do, they're going to be in. They're going to add crazy value. And if they have something going, I'm going to be in because we have that level of synergy where 1 + 1 = 3 with those people. So if you find that, that's very, very valuable. If you don't have that, you got to start somewhere. Start with an idea and hope to pick up those people over time. And even if you're not an incubator, I think that there's merit to being able to let ideas flow in and out, or being able to change or pivot. The Lean Startup has really promoted this, where doing a startup is no longer about pitching an idea, raising a bunch of money, doing it for 3 years, and then seeing what happens. It's a lot more of an iterative process with checkpoints along the way. And sometimes you got to be stubborn and your team has to plow through, but other times you do want to shift and you do want to change ideas. But knowing that line, that's the secret sauce.
That is the secret, absolutely. Let me ask you this. What products is Monkey Inferno currently working on? So you said you had about 20 people. How many projects can they handle right now?
So we're doing 4 projects at once right now, and they sort of fall into 2 buckets. One is sort of the legacy project, which is being modernized today, and that's Birthday Alarm. So this was Michael Birch's first successful startup. It's actually the startup that funded Bebo and allowed him to have such a big exit because he self-funded it. So you have Birthday Alarm, which has been around since, I don't know, 2000. So now it's 13, 14 years old. And we are, for a long time, it operated with no employees during the Bebo phase. It was just printing money on the side. And then, last year we revisited it and we said, hey, wait a minute, we've got all these products we're trying to start from scratch. This product has 50 million members and it makes, it's the cash cow of this business. We should probably work on revitalizing it because it is in decline. So one team is basically taking Birthday Alarm and has modernized it and is working through the challenges of taking a existing business and disrupting itself, essentially. And then the other arm of Monkey Inferno now has become Bebo. And Bebo is not just one project, but a series of small mobile apps, sort of single-purpose apps that all are under the Bebo umbrella, so all made by Bebo.
Okay. No, that's awesome.
That's kind of how the projects break down.
Yeah, and now tell me about how the employment actually works, because it's interesting, right? They actually have shares in projects they're not working on. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like startup communism. You've got 22 people, right, and full time, so they get paid by Monkey Inferno, and then they have a slice of action. So you'll be given a certain amount of shares when you join, and based on performance, it increases. But that goes across the board. So even if your day-to-day focus is on one project and 99% of your time is on that project, you still have a portfolio of projects going in your favor. Okay. So it's just a different model where we wanted, many accelerators and incubators thrive on competition and money being the forcing functions. Ours is collaboration and craft. So we wanted people to be invested in the teammate success so that you're not just a co-working space. You actually are using your skills. Sometimes you hop onto those projects or you advise or you ask critical questions that force them to find the answers. So the idea was, like I said, it's a startup communism, have everybody sort of aligned.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like an incredible concept. And I want to talk more about the other arm of it, Bebo, in a minute. But first, I want to talk about Birthday Alarm for a minute. This is so fascinating to me.
You're the first person to ask me about Birthday Alarm first, which is more people should.
They should, because when you tell me that an app that I don't know about, I've never heard of Birthday Alarm, right? I mean, you have a lot of users. I'm not one of them. But when you tell me that it first bankrolled Bebo while it was being built, allowed it to be sold for almost $1 billion. Right. And then now Birthday Alarm is still bankrolling this new style incubator. I mean, how can we not talk about Birthday Alarm? So here's my question. Birthday Alarm, I'm assuming, and I actually don't know this, I'm assuming it gives you alarms when it's somebody's birthday. Is that the basic idea?
It started as a small feature of a much bigger project Michael was working on, where the project was failing clearly, but users would email him, and when he was a one-man show, he's doing customer support, he's coding, and he's coming up with the product, doing design, which is why it looked the way it looked. But he realized that people were saying, hey, thanks for that reminder. I would have totally forgot my friend's birthday. And remember, this is back in 2000, 2001, where Facebook didn't exist. You didn't have the reminders like that. There was no Google Calendar. There's no mobile phones that are, giving you smart updates all the time. So this was a very valuable service. People want to remember the birthdays and holidays of people that they care about. So the need is really there. And it started as just that, a reminder service. And it was a viral reminder service. So we ask you, hey, do you want to know your friend's family's birthday? You say yes. You ask them, hey, when's your birthday? When they put in their birthday, we ask them,
do you want to
remember? And it grows accordingly. So that grew explosively. And it made just a little bit of money on advertisement back in the day. And then one day, Michael turned on sort of the e-card functionality, so being able to send e-cards for a annual premium membership. And all of a sudden, it sort of 10x'd in value overnight and started, like I said, printing money.
Yeah.
There was a joke. Somebody tried to, was looking to acquire the alarm a couple of years ago. And the guy doing the due diligence, he actually just asked, he's like, why are you guys selling this thing? He goes, man, like the world could end, Armageddon is here, and Birthday Alarm would still be printing money. This thing is like a rock. And in fact, if you look at it over time, it turned out to be a much more sustainable business than Bebo in the end.
Okay.
Ironically.
So here's my question with something like that, and you can tell me if this is the wrong lesson to walk away with, but in my mind, it makes me think, entrepreneurs, we love to chase these moonshots, and we have to. Somebody has to. Somebody's going to build Facebook. Somebody's getting us to Mars. I mean, moonshots are great, right? But in the dark corners of the internet, there's so many things like a birthday alarm that you don't know about, you don't care about, you don't hear about, and they're printing money like there's no tomorrow. Should entrepreneurs get clued in that that kind of app exists and they can be built and there's not as much competition and you need to go do one of them?
Well, I would say this. I think that entrepreneurs, and I'm one of them, where we read all the same stuff. We're all reading Hacker News. We're all reading TechCrunch articles. We're all reading all the forums, going to the same meetups, going to the same conferences, and thus we're in this echo chamber where we're hearing the same thing over and over and over again. And you're hearing about really successful startups raising a ton of money that actually don't have a business model, don't have a bunch of users, don't have engagement, or they have one of the three, and they're still going to search for the next two over time. And I guess what I would say is that we call it the underbelly of the internet. We run into these companies where we say, wow, there's a lot of need and desire for these products, and people are willing to pay, and these companies are doing really well, and they don't need to make a big fuss about how well it's doing because they don't need the hype. They have the real stuff below it. So I would say, first, just don't. I wouldn't say it's about chasing moonshots. I would say don't get too caught up in the news cycle and think that that's all there is. There's a lot else out there. And I would say, ultimately, it's not really about moonshots necessarily. It's about filling needs. Some needs are much harder to fill than others. And Birthday Alarm, to this day, the reason it continued to operate without employees even for a few years was the need was so strong, and it was still adding value to customers every single day. So it's ultimately you can build, I think Nir Eyal has this term, painkillers or vitamins, right? And Birthday Alarm was a painkiller. And as you start to find those painkillers, if you can find a good customer acquisition strategy, you're going to be tremendously successful, more so than anyone really believes.
Yeah, you just put two pieces there together that are so important. The first part, painkiller. The second part, customer acquisition strategy. I mean, you put those two together, it's hard to imagine failure. I mean, and that's exactly what Birthday Alarm has. The virality's built in, and it's a pain that right now, after knowing about it, I'm probably going to sign up on it and pay you some money every month or whatever it is, because I don't want to forget important things, and I want to be able to send them quick, hey, here's a card,
Exactly. And I mean, and there are others in this space trying to do the same thing, but if you are not great at executing, you will never be able to do it. For example, I could go to the reason Birthday Alarm exists right next to Hallmark, who has the same exact offering, is because they're not a tech company. They don't have their customer acquisition strategy. They don't have a viral loop. And I could go sketch a diagram on their company wall and saying, this is how we do it. And they still wouldn't be able to do it because it really takes getting in the weeds. It's not just the idea of, oh, you ask your friends and they ask their friends. There's 1,000 subtleties below that tip it from either being viral or not viral.
Yeah.
And it's very important to do that. So I would say that you start with filling a need, and then you have to do the rest of the work. Which is
the need is the price of entry.
Underestimates it.
Yeah, the need is the price of entry, right? That gets you in the game, and then the 1,000 subtleties is going to make you win.
Right.
No, that's awesome. Now let me ask you about something else before we get to Bebo. I was reading on your blog, and you have a new blogging strategy because you basically, I think, come to the conclusion that you wanted to be a blogger because you have thoughts that you want to get out into the world, but there's a dilemma. You don't have the time to do it, so that means you either have to not blog or just, you had 3 things that were the options. Do you remember what they were, what your 3 options were?
I honestly don't remember what I wrote, but it's pretty. I think it's a pretty relatable thing. A lot of people have ideas. In fact, Twitter solved this need, which was you have something to say, but you don't really need to say it. You don't need to flesh it out. You don't want to flesh it out. You don't have the time to flesh it out, and it just works that way. And so I thought, hey, what if we did this a little bit differently? Where I said, man, we're doing so much cool stuff here. I want to share those learnings, insights, questions with the world, but I honestly just do not have the time to blog. And I said, you know what, it would be cool. And a lot of our kind of product ideas come from this. Is it would be cool if I could just shake my phone, say my idea to the phone, and then someone somewhere writes the blog. How cool would that be? And then I said, I could probably do this. I said, there's a lot of people who are talented at writing that actually struggle to make money. If I could give them a little bit of money, they'd probably write my blog. And the hard part is not about, the hard part for most people would be like Airbnb. Are you comfortable with someone staying in your house? It's are you comfortable with someone else writing your thoughts? Actually, yeah. Alternative is to let those thoughts stay in my head or me waste a lot of my time trying to blog without any clear, return on that blogging investment. I just thought it was a good idea, and so I'm trying it right now. It's purely an experiment. It's called Ghost Blogger, and I'm looking for more ghost bloggers because half my friends want to do it too, and I won't let them talk to my ghost blogger because she's busy. But the idea is, whenever I have an idea, I just explain it in the rawest terms. Like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I did one that was based around ghost blogging. I said, hey, there's something called lopsided markets where there's, you think of a two-sided marketplace and everyone says, how are you going to solve the chicken and egg problem? But in a lopsided marketplace, like ghost blogging, there's on one side this huge pent-up demand, and that can actually fill in the rest over time. Or those are the ones you should target. And that doesn't make sense to most people. And the ghost blogger comes back and says, okay, what did you mean about this? And again, I just kind of explain one more time. And then she writes a first pass at it. And then I might revise it, or I might just post it right away. It doesn't really matter to me at that point. I just want to kick off the discussion, because for me, blogging is not about really crafting beautiful essays. For me, it's about putting interesting thoughts out there and letting the community respond back via Twitter, in person, however it may be, along those lines, saying, hey, I disagree, or hey, I agree, we've seen the same thing.
Yeah,
so that's the Ghost Blogger experiment.
No, it's great. And I read one of the blogs that the Ghost Blogger wrote, and the top of it you said something like, the words are not mine, but the thoughts are. And I thought, okay, like, I actually am reading something from Shaan, but I'm not reading something from Shaan. And you were upfront about it, so it wasn't like I was, it was a bait and switch. It was, these are his thoughts in words that he didn't write.
Yeah.
And, it was a good blog post. Like, I thought, okay, this is something that he thought about, and I'm learning from something inside his mind, and I'm glad he has a ghost blogger, because now I get to learn from Shaan, even though Shaan's a busy man. So I think it's a really cool concept. And here's my question. You said there's so much demand for it, and as soon as I heard about it, I'm thinking, all right, do I want a ghost blogger? Like, that sounds awesome, Do you think this is maybe the future of thought leadership, of inbound marketing? Because the guys that are actually thought leaders are really busy, and the girls that are actually trying to do inbound marketing, they're really busy. Is this a way to maybe crack that open a little bit?
I think so. I always think it's interesting whenever you can take something that was, in the spectrum of creators and consumers, and it's usually 1% creators, max 10% creators. And I always ask the question, how would you make it 80% creators? How could you make it so that more of the base users are creating as well as consuming? This is what Tumblr did really, really well with the reblog concept. They said, hey, it's not about creating original content all the time. It's about curating, and curating turned into a form of creation. So I thought, what they did sort of for, image and sort of visual-centric blogging, this could actually open up blogging to a lot of minds who don't have time to blog. Like, the most successful people, the most interesting people I go to dinner with, they don't blog, and they don't blog because they're not bloggers, they don't have time, they can't commit to a regular schedule, all that stuff. And this gets rid of that. So I don't know if this is going to work. Again, it's an experiment. So what I'm trying to do is get 20 of each, and see if that experiment works. And if it does, we'll see where that goes. But at the very least, it solves my need right now, which is I want to put my thoughts down on paper.
Yeah, and to give people the idea of the economics, I think you posted the numbers of how much you pay per blog post, and I was really shocked by how low it was. People are willing to write these blog posts. I think you said for $10, right?
Yeah, there's people willing to write it for $10, and they're happy to. And then I said, well, if you're writing for $10, I can give you more volume. It's it's a win-win. And this is the point. It's not to be a content farm. I'm not doing this for SEO. Yeah. I'm doing this with a more pure purpose. So I don't know what will happen, but yeah, that's what I was saying. The lopsided market. This happened not too long ago. All right, let me give you a quick anecdote. I became CEO of Monkey Inferno and decided, hey, I was 24 at the time, now 25, and I said, okay, I should probably stop looking like a college kid. My peers here are much older than me in many cases, and I want to present myself a little more professionally than when I was just product manager guy coming in, kicking things around. So I went on Craigslist one night and I just typed in, "Be my stylist." I said, I want a whole new wardrobe. Come to my house, throw everything that sucks away. I will give you $3,000 to shop for me. I don't need suits. I just need this kind of wear. And I will give you 10% of the VIG. So I will pay you $300 to shop for me. And I didn't know anything about this economics. I just made it up. I go to sleep and I wake up in the morning and I have 85 requests in my inbox. So First, the power of Craigslist. Second, pent-up demand, again, where I was getting actual stylists, I was getting photographers, retail workers, models. I was getting like all kinds of people who were saying, I would love to do this. You don't even need to spend $3,000. I can do it for 2,000, whatever it was. I said, wow, there's some advantages here. They're working in my favor. They're not trying to sell me extra stuff and make me pay more.
Yeah.
They're getting a fixed fee regardless. They're my ally. And then I said, holy shit, there's a lot of mostly females out there who love to shop for guys and are never given the opportunity for it. And there's a lot of guys who hate shopping. Hey, is this an idea? And so I did the service. I loved it. I had a few of my friends do it as well. And then we vetted it as, is this a product idea we want to work on? Ultimately, we didn't want to do it, but because we didn't think the other side of the marketplace was quite there, the sort of the men's demand. But I said, it's very interesting when you tap into some of these things with extra capacity or latent energy, I call it. So all the sharing economy stuff does this with extra space or extra car space. I think it's going to happen with, if anyone has an idea that taps into stay-at-home moms finding a way to make some money working from home, please contact me. There's a few of these things where there is an infinite supply of people willing to do something for a little bit of cash. If you can, and is there a buyer on the other side is really the question.
Yeah, and this is great because I was asking about ghostwriting because I was thinking some of the startups watching this might use it as a way to get inbound content, not to be a content farm, but to get SEO value and to get high-quality content that really did come from their mind, because they get all their people telling the ghost blogger what to write, and they get these great blog posts come out every couple of days. But then the insight that you're really bringing out is way better than that, which is if you're looking to attack something, look for a lopsided market, because two-sided markets we know can be very valuable. You can make a lot of money on a two-sided market, but if you find a lopsided one, it's like a two-sided market that's already like primed and ready to go and just waiting for you to unleash, like you said, the latent energy there.
Right. And only 1 out of 5 might have the other side come in, but that's still great odds for what would be
it's better than normal two-sided market odds.
Right.
No, that's a great insight. I really like that. All right, now let's talk about Bebo a little bit. So Bebo sold AOL back in 2008, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong. $850 million. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's what the websites say at least. Okay, what'd you guys buy it back for? Is that public?
That is public. So we bought it back for the healthy sum of $1 million.
Okay, so sold for $850 in 2008. A few years later, you buy it back for $1 million. My guess is...
high, buy low.
But yeah, exactly. My guess is if you bought it back for $1 million, it wasn't doing too well. It probably had some users doing some stuff. There was some activity there for it to be worth $1 million, obviously. But it wasn't nothing like it was when it sold for $850, right?
Yeah, I mean, the traffic was maybe 1/1000th of what it was at its peak. It was still significant. I believe there was still about 200,000 people logging in every month trying to use it. And the site was completely broken. So you couldn't upload a photo. You couldn't become a member. You couldn't do key things of a social network. And still 200,000 people were logging in and using it for very interesting use cases, actually. But I would say that, we did not buy it for the product and the usage, the current usage. We bought it for, again, the potential and the fact that it was a brand and that we were already working on really cool social stuff anyways, and we needed a go-to-market strategy. And for us, that was Bebo.
Okay. So is Bebo kind of the name that you're going to put on some things you already had in the works? Because earlier you mentioned that you're going to release some multiple apps. So Bebo is kind of multiple mobile apps. Is that right? Is that what Bebo is now?
Think about it a little. The relationship between Bebo and these apps will be a little bit like Twitter and Vine or Facebook and Instagram, where there are standalone brands and they're really simple products that do one thing really, really well. And they're like fresh concepts that are going to be hit or miss. But what we wanted to do was, when we bought back Bebo, we said, hey, we're already building cool stuff anyways. But those weren't the ideas that ended up becoming Bebo. That was just the thought process of, how are we going to choose between these ideas as to which one we relaunch as Bebo? And we said, actually, each one of these is interesting, and they sort of fit into what we believe is the sort of mobile strategy, which is single-purpose apps that do one thing really, really well, rather than overly feature-bloated apps that are full-blown social networks. I didn't think that was the future. So I said, okay, I think we have some cool ideas for some social media products, and I want to launch them, and I can't really kill any one of them because they're all showing promise from idea stage to prototype stage to initial market testing. Who am I to say which one it should be right now? So instead, what we realized was when we relaunched Bebo, we knew. Let me take a step back. So we relaunched Bebo. We bought Bebo back, pretty much knowing nothing about what the state of the brand was. we knew there was a brand, but we knew it might be, totally bad. It might be tarnished. And I personally, I remember I was never a Bebo user. I was a MySpace user back in the day. And I remember when MySpace said it was coming back, and I thought, who the hell would go back to MySpace,
exactly.
right? Like, it was not an option. I was curious to see what they came out with, but not with the intention of joining. And I thought that's probably going to be the same thing with Bebo, unless we do something pretty dramatic here. Mm-hmm. So we went to the Samovar Tea Lounge, just around the corner here in San Francisco, and we had a long cup of tea, and we basically said, how would this typically go, right? Let's imagine what a typical, someone bought this company, high-tech company here in San Francisco, what would they do? And we listed off the things they would do. So they would raise X amount of money. They would have a team of 12 people, 15 people working on this. It would take them a year to 18 months to get to market. Come out with one thing with a huge launch party and celebrities, and they would throw a bunch of money at the problem. Mm-hmm. They would have an all-star board of advisors of crusty old guys who have done it before. And we said, each one of them, we're going to do it completely differently. So we're going to have 3 people working on the project. We're going to have multiple concepts. We're going to go to market within 6 months. We're going to, our board of advisors is going to be average users, not successful entrepreneurs, because we want advice from our users. Mm-hmm. We said, we're not going to do a huge PR heavy launch. We said, we're not going to say that we're cool. We're not going to tell them, when MySpace came back, we looked at the campaign, and it was Justin Timberlake. They bought it back. They started running TV commercials. They did all kinds of things, which were basically saying to the user, MySpace is cool. And users are not dumb. Users are saying, hold on, where were you for 10 years, right? You're not cool anymore. You can't just come back today and say you're cool, right? As if nothing ever happened. Yeah. And so, we know people are aware. So instead, with Bebo, we put up a video. We did a video over the weekend, and with some guys we knew in London called Rubber Republic.
Yeah, awesome. We actually had them on the show earlier.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So we worked with Rubber Republic and came up with a concept for a video, shot it in one weekend, and it's up on Bebo.com right now, and it's basically a spoof corporate video. So it starts with Michael saying, hi, I'm Michael Birch, founder of Bebo. At its peak, we had millions of users, and then he starts to show, they shared photos, but it's a guy with a, drunken face photo, right? It's we took insightful quizzes, and it's those silly online quizzes you see, and he's poking fun at, what Bebo really was. Yeah. And he wasn't saying Bebo was the best and it's going to be the best again, or it is still the best. He was poking fun at it. It was very self-deprecating. Mm-hmm. And that's what we wanted to come back with, which was acknowledging you can't move forward until you acknowledge the past. So we acknowledged the past. We actually killed the product. So we turned it off, the old Bebo site. And that video and landing page generated, I haven't really shared this with too many people, but it generated over 700,000 signups on the waiting list. And that's in addition to all the people who are in the database, the millions of old members. So we said, wait a minute, we have a really powerful distribution mechanism here. Could we make Bebo the umbrella brand and let each product sort of be made by Bebo and have its own fresh legs, fresh name, fresh start?
It's so smart what you guys did, because I remember somebody sent me the video, they sent me the landing page, and this was a few months back. I looked at it, I thought it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. I instantly put my email in, and from that day, because I wasn't a Bebo user either, right. From that day though, I thought, Bebo is cool, and I don't know what they're going to do next, but I'm going to look very carefully when it's ready, because they already show that there's just an authenticity to them. And it was really the first time I got to meet the creator of Bebo in that video, and he's a likable guy, and he's funny, So I think that video was just so great on so many levels.
Yeah, the fact that Michael was game for it. We had this. I looked at Michael's profile. That was where we got the idea for the idea that there was a Bebo feature called the whiteboard. There's inappropriate drawings, of course. Anytime you give someone a pen and say doodle, there's only one thing they actually doodle. And so on Michael's profile, we saw a ton of those, and not even in a hurtful way. They were often really cool comics of a penis in the shape of Bebo that's wonderful, right? But the fact that Michael was game for it sort of showed why people might like Bebo, because he's a likable guy, and he is a down-to-earth guy, and he is kind of able to make fun of himself. He's the kind of guy you do want to have a beer with. Yeah. And so we said our only chance is to let people know who we are. And if they trust us, if they say, hey, you guys are cool, I want to see what you guys come up with, because you've proven to me that you're interesting people. That was really the brand. That was the goal. So that was step one. Then later, I don't know if you saw this, there was a pretty interesting situation that happened on Reddit. Did you see
No, I didn't see that.
So on Reddit one morning, on Reddit they have TI, which is Today I Learned. It was Today I Learned. The founder of Bebo sold it to AOL for $850 million, bought it back for $1 million, right? And people just thought, that story just has a certain
It does.
to it. And so on Reddit, people were talking about it. And that morning I wake up and I've got my phone in my bed. And I start a Reddit AMA saying, "Hey, I'm the CEO of Bebo. Ask me anything." And this thing took off, goes to #1 on the Reddit front page for almost half the day. And, generates so much so much interest. And what I was doing was answering the questions 100% truthfully. So no PR rhetoric or whatever. And of course that works on Reddit. Nobody on Reddit, they're very cynical people on Reddit. I'm a Redditor, so I know what mistakes you should not make on Reddit. And what happened was it was tremendous, where a lot of people there were like, "I've never even heard of Bebo. I don't even care about social networking. But for you, sir, I will sign up for Bebo." You buy back loyalty one person at a time, and it starts to tip where now if we come out with something cool, I want it to feel to 100,000 people out there like their best friend just made this app and they're going to promote it for us.
Yeah.
And that was the end goal. The whole way along, that was the end goal.
It definitely felt like there was a connection there with me personally, kind of seeing the launch process and signing up. So I agree with that. It seems almost like you've taken the Monkey Inferno model of let's have a lot of seeds and see which ones bloom, and you apply that to Bebo itself. Bebo is a number of apps, and you're going to see which ones kind of work and which ones don't. So in a sense, Bebo can't fail, because something in that family of apps is going to work, and you're going to double down on it, and you're going to kill some other stuff, and you're going to create new ideas under the Bebo name. So it's kind of a fail-proof strategy in that sense, right?
Well, you said it, not me.
Well, so let me ask you this, because this is the tough question, and you alluded to it earlier. Knowing when to pivot, when to kill something, when to double down, that is the $1 million question. When do you look at one of these Bebo apps or one of the Monkey Inferno products and say, it's just not working? Yeah, we're making some money. Yeah, we got some eyeballs. Yeah, we could go sideways for another year on this thing, but we all know it's not working. How do you know that? Because that's something that's so hard to figure out. And you're in a situation where you have to answer that question a lot more than a normal CEO.
Yeah, no, I think that it is the hardest thing. That's the hardest part of being successful at entrepreneurship, is making the right decisions, and that is the most critical of high-level decisions you can make. Should I be working on this, right? So everything else is just a series of good decisions after that. There's examples on both sides, right? You can look at something like Pinterest or one of the persevering stories where everything's flatlining for a year and then all of a sudden it becomes Pinterest. And then you can look at examples on the other side, and there are plenty of them, which is it flatlined for many years and then it just stayed flatlining and died.
Yeah.
And so there's an analogy for everything. If you wanted to justify doing some action, if you're a smart guy, you can justify it with 10 case studies. So that doesn't help you. How are you going to make this decision? Well, my second week at Monkey Inferno, I was still blown away. I'm walking around this office. Everything is so interesting. I didn't know places like this existed. If I had, I would have done this right away out of college. I would have skipped college. I would have come here right away. But I said, okay, so everything seems so good, right? It's kind of like what you were saying. Everything seems so foolproof. What's our biggest risk? How do we fail? And I asked within one of our head of engineering here, and he said, our biggest risk is mediocrity. And he was spot on, which is, it's okay to fail for us, and it's definitely okay to succeed. What's not okay is to be in this lingering state of mediocrity where it's good enough to keep going, but not good enough to make it, make a success, and it's an opportunity lost for moving on to something else. So the question I have, the one I obsess with, is how do I avoid mediocrity? And that's kind of an interesting way to live life in general. It's you have a choice of something to do on the weekend. Just avoid mediocrity, and you'll end up doing something really cool.
That's awesome.
And so that's kind of something that overwhelms me in my thinking. And so for us, we have a framework that we try to use where we go from idea to market in 6 weeks. That's the goal. Okay. And it's a 6-week process, and each week has it's a phase that you're working in and doing a certain thing. And you can drop out at any one phase. If, after the first week of ideation, you realize, hey, it's not a good idea, great, you kill it. After the second week of talking to some users and they're not saying what you thought they would say, kill it. And then ultimately you get to the end of the 6 weeks, you have a prototype, you have data, you have qualitative feedback as well, and you got to make a keep or kill decision. And we put a checkpoint in so that you at least have the discussion. And we say that the default is for a startup to die. So if you want to succeed, you got to prove that you're not going to die. Okay. And that happens one of two ways, right? You either have traction or you have real obsession and stubbornness.
Okay.
Where you say, in spite of everything, I know this is going to be successful. So we wait till someone puts it on the line in one of those two ways. You either show me the money, right? Show me the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
or you obsess over it to the point where you say, I need X amount of time because here's what I've learned up to date, and now I know what to do next. And then we chew off another chunk of time. But I think
Gotcha.
it's just a mindset of avoiding mediocrity and understanding that a startup by default is meant to die. It's not, we're not all meant to be successful with each venture.
Yeah.
When you accept that, you sort of approach things a little differently.
You're absolutely right. That's the insight right there, is that the default is death, not in a negative way, just in a realistic way. And if
Right.
that's the default, then make it not the default. Somehow overcome that default to keep us moving forward. And, if you're willing to do that, you're going to let go of so many bad things along the way and only hang on to the good ones.
And there's one other very important thing that happens. I know many entrepreneurs who are out there listening to this will understand what I mean when I say this, which is when you are not afraid of dying. So if you accept that, death is the default, like you said, I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Go for it.
But when you accept that, you don't become afraid of it. It's actually the most likely outcome. It's the inevitable. It becomes the default. So you don't fear it. But what you need to do then is steer away from it. And in order to do that, you have to address the elephant in the room. So with any startup, you can use whatever vanity metrics you want to make it look good, or selectively choose feedback to only hear the good things. And you do that because you're actually afraid of answering the question of, am I failing? But if you think that that is the only question you should be answering at all times, then you will be going out and actively searching for, okay, this should fail because of X. Well, let me go address that head on. And if I win that battle, I can probably solve the rest of these things.
Yeah.
And you sort of, a lot of people are able to be very busy and do a lot of work without actually answering the elephant in the room, which is like kind of the looming threat of death. And so when you're not afraid of it, you actually take the right actions as well and do the right things and ask the right questions. So I think it's just a much better model.
Yeah, it's almost like you've warped time in a sense. It's like, let's just go to the future where we've already failed and work backwards into the present and just go ahead and fix it.
Yeah, I'm obnoxiously famous here for continuing to ask the question. Right when we're most excited about an idea and like the brainstorming is happening, I'm the Debbie Downer, and I say the following line, like when I feel that we're all sort of patting ourselves on the back for this genius idea or genius strategy. And I say, when we're sitting here in 6 months and somebody says, hey, what about that app? What happened? What's our answer going to be when it fails? I say, when it fails, what's our answer going to be? And then that becomes objective number one, solve that problem, because that's actually the most likely reason for failure, or most likely risk, highest risk, or whatever it is. So I think asking that question of, in 6 months when I'm explaining to someone why this failed, what am I going to be saying? Well, start avoiding that conversation now.
Yeah, entrepreneurs, like, we have the ability to be the eternal optimist. I mean, we could just run through walls one after the other, and that can also be one of our greatest weaknesses if we don't keep it in check and let our optimism, be in the right areas at the right time for the right reasons. It can put us going sideways for a long time. Now, let me ask you this. I've heard you say before that you're not, with Bebo, you're not necessarily competing with Facebook. You're not necessarily competing with Twitter. The way that you view it is you're competing with the market. You're competing with anything that's taken their time because you're trying to get a slice of the user's time. What do you mean by that?
I think what happens, look at Facebook right now, for example. In the top right corner of your Facebook page, there's now a trending news section. Okay, where did that come from? That came from looking at Twitter and saying, how do I compete with these guys? These guys, people are using Twitter for this use case. Let's steal that feature and implement it on our site, regardless of how it fits, where it fits, why it fits, etc. Right? Just let's do that.
Something more on the right side. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Right. But whatever it is, I think it's extremely dangerous to think of your competition as another company. My competition is like apathy, boredom, things that the user feels and does instead of thinking about me. So all I think about is what will make this user, how can I compete against the market, anything else for this user's time? And that means I have to appeal to the user. That means I have to think about which section of time I want in a user's day, and then think about their needs during that time. And I just think it's a better way of thinking about it. Otherwise, you get into this like feature race with another company, and that's probably the worst thing you can do is try to, as an underdog, try to copy features, or even as a top dog, try to copy features of an upstart. How often does that really work? Very rarely, I think.
No, that's absolutely true. Well, Shaan, this has been just an incredible interview. I have one more last question for you, and then I know you have a request for our audience, and we'll get into that. But the last question to end every interview with is, what's the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow? Because you get to watch a lot of startups try to grow.
Um, Good question. What's the best advice? Oh, okay, here we go. So John Prendergrass, shout out to my original mentor. We came to him with our numbers when we were trying to grow. My very first startup. It was actually a sushi restaurant, so totally different thing. And I was trying to grow it, and the question was, and I was actually pretty proud of the progress we had made. And we've got a 10% lift here. There's 7% people do this, and he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "At the early stages, you got to be really clear. If you are here, and you need to be where? Here, right? Like answer that question." Mm-hmm. And then realize that takes a 300%, 3,000% lift. So you should be looking for really big swings. He's like, it's not necessarily look for one feature or one thing that's the silver bullet, but your target should be a very big swing up front. He said, don't optimize. Don't worry about efficiency. Worry about impact or effectiveness. And I think that's we make this mistake sometimes too with our early stage prototype. We try to do something on the landing page to improve conversion. And it's like, that is the last thing we should be thinking about right now is optimizing our landing page. We need to be thinking about what's the most high impact thing we could do today. Mm-hmm. And I guess for most growth teams, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of experiments to run. Everybody's got a brilliant idea of how to fix the problem. So you got to be incredibly good and disciplined at triaging out the things that are high impact, low cost, and going through that exercise constantly and revisiting what you know and what you don't know to really look for bigger swings at the early stage. And then over time, look for smaller wins because you've already explored the big radical changes, which are most likely to happen early on when your mind is not fixed on, this is what my product is, this is how it works, this is exactly what it does. That becomes a very limiting belief over time. So the early stage is when you look for the 300% swing, not 10%.
Yeah, well, even what you did earlier in the interview is an example of this. You didn't, let's do some A/B tests on the Bebo landing page, but when Reddit was talking about you, you jumped on and didn't ask me anything and probably had a ton of new people sign up because of that. One is a 3,000% lift. One is a little better conversion on the traffic that wasn't there. I mean, it's a different game.
That Reddit AMA drove 220,000 people to the site that day, right? It's like, what am I can change a button color, but that's not necessarily what I should be doing at that time, right? Yeah. So I think the best people I know at growing companies are able to very clearly hear a bunch of ideas and distill out not necessarily the winners, but the area that they should be experimenting in, or distill out, yeah, you're probably right, that will have an impact, but that's not the impact I need today. I need a much bigger impact today. So I'm going to bucket that. I'm going to put that in the icebox for now.
Yeah, it's kind of like the startups. Which ones you put on deck and which ones you actually go forward with. Same thing with growth ideas. Which ones are stacked ranked to the top that are actually going to bring the big numbers in. All right, so you're actually looking to hire. So you're looking to hire a growth hacker, right? So go ahead and tell the people listening why they should care.
All right, you should care if you want to grow a company. So we are starting with a user base that's substantial. So you're not starting from scratch. This was key. And then from there, you're going to be putting out cool products all the time and experimenting across the board, because even the best people I know at growth have done it in one area. Maybe it's games, or maybe it's a social network. And the experience and the skills that you want should be across the board. That's where you actually get a little bit more meta understanding of what it means to grow a business. Mm-hmm. This is where you can sort of hack experience by I've only been in tech for 18 months, and I feel egotistically that I know as much as I would have in 10 years of doing startups if I was doing them in a series rather than in parallel here. So for people that are hungry and want to learn and want to start on something that has high potential, you should be looking at places like us, and there are a couple others out there that will give you a variety and have an actual strategy of taking fresh concepts to market with an eager audience in place. And then from what you can do from there, that's up to you. So I have a challenge. I throw them down the gauntlet for someone. I would like to get from 1 million to 100 million users, and I'm looking for a person who's going to take me from 1 million to 100 million. So if anyone out there wants to do that, just tweet at me. It's at Shaan VP. I don't know if it's listed on your site somewhere, but
below the video, yeah.
Below the video. So click right there and talk to me.
That's awesome. So somebody, step to the plate, knock one out. Let's see you work for Bebo. Shaan, thank you so much for coming on Growth Hacker TV. This has been awesome.
Thank you.